Have you ever done something from the heart, never imagining it would completely change the course of your life? Think about it. A simple, almost instinctive gesture that demands nothing in return, but suddenly becomes the turning point of an entire story. Maybe you've helped someone on the street, offered a plate of food, a smile, or even a listening ear to someone who needed to vent, and most of the time we expect nothing in return. But what if this seemingly small gesture had the power to transform destinies? This is the essence of what you'll discover today, and what happened in this story may move you in ways you couldn't even imagine. It was an ordinary day at a simple roadside restaurant, the kind many people pop in for a quick bite to eat before getting back to their daily routine. There worked a waitress who was facing her own struggles. Bills piled up, dreams seemed distant, and the weight of life was felt in every detail of her daily life. Yet, despite the pressure, there was a flame of generosity within her that wouldn't go out. She knew what it was like to lack, what it was like to have little, and precisely because of that, she understood the value of every act of compassion. Have you ever experienced this? That feeling that even in the midst of hardship, your heart can't close its doors to someone in need. It was in this setting that a soldier entered the restaurant. Exhausted, his expression heavy with stories only those who serve others know, he sat in silence. Nothing about him stood out, but there was something different in his gaze, a mixture of weariness and dignity, as if carrying the weight of responsibilities greater than himself. The waitress noticed not only the uniform, but the man's humanity, and there before her a choice appeared. Perhaps you've been in this position, helping even when you yourself need help. It's not an easy decision. The mind calculates the cost, but the heart speaks louder, and that's exactly what happened. That woman, even in financial difficulty, made a decision many might consider foolish. She paid for the soldier's meal, without expecting recognition, without seeking applause, simply driven by the certainty that doing good is never in vain. What makes this story so powerful is precisely the contrast. While we live in a world where indifference often seems more prevalent than solidarity, a gesture like this reminds us of what truly matters. Honesty, empathy, compassion, values that restore our faith in humanity. And perhaps that's what connects us so deeply to stories like this. They show us that there are still people willing to choose kindness, even when that choice comes at a cost. Now, stay with me until the end, because what happened after this simple gesture goes far beyond anything the waitress could have imagined. You'll realize how life has surprising ways of giving back what we give, and how the unexpected can change everything in a matter of hours. What you discover now may surprise you, because this isn't just a story about a paid meal. It's about hope, about choices that reveal character, and about how acts of kindness can have consequences no one can foresee. And it's precisely at this point that the story begins to take on even more moving tones. Because while that woman believed she had made only a small gesture of solidarity, life was preparing something that would completely change her destiny. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because what happened next proves that no act of kindness goes unnoticed. And as this scene unfolds in our imagination, a simple woman, struggling, choosing generosity over indifference, I know that somehow this story touches you too. Because we've all been in moments like these, when a gesture might seem small, but within it carried a decision capable of changing paths. And that's precisely why I want to invite you to join me in this conversation. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below. With what has touched you most so far, it could be a memory, a reflection, or even a personal experience you've had. Each comment is a way to make this story even more vivid, because when you share your vision, others are inspired too. And if you feel that stories like this need to continue being told, your like makes all the difference. It's a simple gesture, but it helps this message reach more people who may need a reminder that there's still hope, compassion, and solidarity in this world. Also, if you want to stay up to date with each new inspiring story I share, subscribe to the channel. Your participation is what keeps this space going, what makes this channel grow and reach more hearts that need this kind of content. All of this isn't just about numbers or metrics, but about creating a community that believes in the power of kindness and transformation. And every time you interact, this chain grows stronger. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic because what happened after this unexpected gesture will show you that life always finds a way to surprise those who choose to act with their hearts. She wasn't just a waitress in an ordinary restaurant. Behind the wrinkled apron and the tired smile she offered customers, there was a woman living a daily battle against the pressure of bills piling up on her kitchen table. The rent was already late, the refrigerator was almost always empty, and nights were marked by endless calculations, trying to stretch every penny until the end of the month. It was a harsh reality, but one common to so many people who, despite financial hardship, forge ahead, sustained by a strength that comes from within, by a resilient mindset that insists on not giving up. Despite her exhausting routine, there was a light within her that never dimmed, the ability to see others. While many shut themselves away under the weight of their own problems, she had the gift of perceiving when someone around her needed a simple gesture of compassion. This hidden truth within her revealed itself in small acts, almost imperceptible to outsiders, but which had a real impact on the lives of those receiving them. A coffee served with more attention, a kind word to a lonely customer, even an extra plate discreetly given to someone who seemed hungry. None of these solved her own problems, but they nourished the dignity she carried as a shield against the harshness of life. It's in this context of silent struggle that the story begins to take shape. The waitress was seen by many as just another employee, but her journey hid a backdrop of sacrifices and difficult choices. Amidst the whirlwind of uncertainty, her heart remained willing to help, as if each act of kindness was also a reminder that her own hope was still alive. And this decision to maintain compassion even when everything around her seemed to be crumbling was, in itself, a profound transformation. She demonstrated through her actions that generosity doesn't depend on abundance, but on the willingness to share what little one has. One night, while working another long shift, she glanced around the restaurant and noticed something different. Among the customers coming and going, there was someone whose presence caught her attention. It wasn't because of his uniform, but because of the weight on his shoulders, the weary look in his eyes, and the posture of someone carrying memories of battles that stretched far beyond the walls of a barracks. A soldier, young, but bearing the scars of experiences that time has yet to soften. She immediately realized that this man carried within him not only physical hunger, but also a kind of weariness of the soul. At that moment, the waitress faced a choice. She barely had enough money to pay her own bills, but something inside her told her that this soldier needed more than a self-purchased meal. He needed a gesture that would remind him that there was still good in the world. And it was with this mindset that she made an unexpected decision to pay for his meal out of her own pocket, even though she knew it meant giving up something essential to herself. The impact of this moment was not only in the plate of food placed before an exhausted man, but in the revelation that sometimes it is the most burdened hearts that choose to carry the weight of others. This simple, silent scene seemed lost amidst so many daily events. But in truth, it was there that a larger story began to unfold. One that would transcend the confines of the restaurant and transform into a narrative capable of inspiring thousands. The waitress didn't know it, but that gesture would be the key to a series of revelations that would completely change the course of her life. Because when someone acts out of true compassion, it's as if an invisible chain of transformation is set in motion, connecting destiny to destiny, decision to decision, until everything connects into something much greater than we can imagine. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what happened after the waitress's choice will show that even the smallest gestures of solidarity can open doors to unexpected twists and turns. Comment: I'm on this journey too. The sound of silverware hitting plates and the murmur of conversation filled the restaurant. But when the door opened, something different happened. It was as if time had slowed down, allowing everyone to notice the entrance of someone who could not go unnoticed. A soldier crossed the threshold, his steps firm but laden with a weariness that was more than just physical. His wrinkled uniform, sunken eyes, and disciplined posture revealed a story greater than any words could describe. It was the living portrait of someone who had faced internal and external battles, bearing on his skin and soul invisible marks that only those who have endured intense experiences can bear. He didn't seem there just for a meal. There was a mix of hunger and silence in his gaze, as if the dish that was to come wasn't just about food, but about an attempt to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos he carried within. She sat at a discreet table, away from the hustle and bustle, as if she didn't want to disturb him. The automatic gesture of reaching into his pocket and hesitating for a few seconds already revealed the hidden truth he was trying to disguise. Perhaps he didn't even have enough money to pay for what he needed. It was a simple moment, but full of impact, capable of revealing more about her life than any long conversation could. The waitress, watching from a distance, immediately recognized that look, the same one she had seen in herself so many times when facing her own survival dilemmas, and it was this silent connection, this immediate empathy, that made her pay attention in a different way. There before her was a man who had served his country, but who at that moment wasn't sure he could even serve himself a plate of food. The cruel irony of life unfolded before her eyes. Someone who had once demonstrated courage on the battlefield now faced the hardest battle of all, that of maintaining dignity amidst scarcity. As he slowly leafed through the menu, it was clear his mind wasn't just choosing what to eat. It was calculating, counting coins in his imagination, assessing whether he would have to give up something basic to afford the meal. And yet there was a firm posture about him, as if trying to hide any sign of fragility. But fragility isn't weakness. It's simply proof that even the strongest have limits. And this contrast between the strength the uniform represented and the vulnerability of his situation made the scene even more powerful, almost cinematic. The customers around her went about their lives without realizing it, each one immersed in their own conversations, their own problems. But for the waitress, this wasn't just another night at work. It was the beginning of something she didn't yet fully understand, but already felt in her heart. Because there were times when life presented her with not just people, but opportunities to act. And in that moment, she knew she was about to make a decision that would somehow change everything. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this soldier's story, combined with the waitress's silent courage, shows us that encounters don't happen by chance, and that every gesture, even the smallest, can become a link capable of uniting destinies that would never cross otherwise. Comment: that makes sense to me. She walked around the room with the tray in her hands, but the weight she carried wasn't just the dishes. It was the weight of a decision beginning to form in her mind. As she watched the soldier, alone at that secluded table, something inside her told her he needed more than a meal. He needed someone who would see him as a human being, not just another customer. But the dilemma was cruel, because she herself could barely make ends meet. The overdue rent, the electricity bill that already had a notice of disconnection, the debts that seemed to grow like a constant shadow, all of this made her count every penny that came in and out of her hands. Logic told her I couldn't spend anything more than what was strictly necessary. But her heart insisted on speaking louder. As she approached to take the order, she noticed the care with which the soldier pronounced each word, as if choosing not only the dish, but also the right words to hide the difficulty. He ordered the cheapest item on the menu, something that would barely sustain his tired body, but would fit within the few coins he probably had in his pocket. At that moment, the waitress's heart sank, because she recognized in him the same attitude she had so often adopted, pretending everything was fine when in reality there was no choice. The dilemma took shape: follow reason or listen to compassion. And in this internal conflict, something reminded her of the stories her mother told her when she was still a child, stories of generosity, of people who had little but still shared. Perhaps this was the moment to put into practice what so often seemed like a distant lesson. But of course the fear was also there. What if she ran out later? What if today's choice would harm her tomorrow? It was the classic battle between survival and kindness, between a scarcity mindset and the courage to believe that good always returns in some form. With firm steps but trembling hands, she returned to the kitchen and made a decision that at first glance made no financial sense. She would pay for his meal, not because there was any left over, but precisely because there was a shortage. And it's curious how sometimes choices that seem illogical to the world carry within them the most powerful hidden truth, that solidarity can create invisible bridges that no mathematics can explain. It was a transformative choice, not only for the soldier, but also for herself. When the dish arrived at the table, the surprise on his face was immediate. His eyes widened. He hesitated to accept, almost reflexively refusing, as if he didn't want to be a burden. But with a discreet smile, she simply said, "It's all right, enjoy your meal." There were no speeches, no long explanations, just a silent gesture that carried immense meaning. And in that instant, she realized she had done the right thing, even if her wallet told her otherwise. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this dilemma isn't just the waitress's. It's a reflection of the journey we all face when we have to choose between the fear of missing something and the courage to believe that a single gesture can change our destinies. Comment: I'm on this journey too. She walked to the counter with a stride that blended firmness and fragility. On the outside, she looked like just another waitress doing her job, but inside, she carried a determination that couldn't be put into words. She pulled some crumpled bills from her apron, the little she had set aside to buy something simple at the end of the shift, perhaps bread for breakfast or an essential item for the house. And there, without much thought for what would happen next, she handed them to the cashier and asked him to record the soldier's meal as paid. The attendant looked at her in surprise, but she simply nodded silently, as if carrying within herself a truth that needed no explanation. It was a small act in the eyes of the world, but enormous in meaning. When he returned with the plate in hand, the atmosphere seemed different. The restaurant, until then filled with scattered conversations and trivial noises, seemed frozen in time. The soldier, who until that moment had kept his gaze lowered, almost embarrassed by the modest request, looked up and saw something he hadn't expected. The dish placed before him wasn't the cheapest nor the simplest, but a full, hot meal designed to provide sustenance and dignity. And before he could even open his mouth to protest, he heard only one short but compassionate sentence. Today, it's on me." His silence lasted a few seconds, but the expression on his face said more than any words could convey. His eyes welled up as if this meal was more than just food. It was a reminder that kindness still existed in the world, that unexpected gestures have the power to break through invisible walls. He tried to argue, saying he couldn't accept that he didn't want to be a burden, but the waitress just smiled, a discreet, almost shy smile, but one that carried immense strength. It was the smile of someone who understood the weight of having nothing, and precisely because of that, knew the value of giving something. The impact of that moment wasn't just the dish served, but the invisible exchange that took place between them. The soldier received food, but the waitress, somehow, received something even greater. The feeling that even amid her own struggles, she still had the power to transform someone else's reality. And this, deep down, is one of life's most profound revelations, realizing that even when we believe we have almost nothing, we can still give everything that matters. As he ate, still in disbelief, she watched from afar, feeling a mix of peace and vulnerability. Peace for having followed her heart. Vulnerability for knowing that tomorrow might be even harder for her. But such is the nature of acts of kindness. They rarely make immediate sense, but they carry within them seeds of transformation that blossom in due time. And if we look at this scene more closely, we realize something bigger. It's not just a waitress helping a soldier. It's a mindset choice, a decision to see others as a mirror of ourselves. It's about believing that every decision, no matter how simple, has the power to make an impact. That plate of food wasn't just an act of generosity. It was a reminder that there are moments when life's hidden truth reveals itself. What we give from the heart returns to us in unexpected ways. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this story doesn't end at the restaurant. What happened next shows how such a simple gesture can trigger a journey no one could have foreseen. Comment: "That makes sense to me." The soldier remained silent for a few seconds, as if he needed time to comprehend what was before him. It wasn't just a plate of food. It was a gesture that dismantled him. His eyes fixed on the waitress with a mixture of astonishment and gratitude that required no words. He tried to speak, but his voice seemed stuck in his throat. Finally, with effort, he managed a "thank you," which came out filled with emotion, as if it weren't just words, but a confession that this meant more than he could express. As he ate, with each bite, his expression changed. The hardness in his gaze, one who faced visible and invisible battles, softened, giving way to a radiance that only the feeling of being seen and recognized can bring. He wasn't accustomed to receiving without giving something in return, much less experiencing such selfless compassion. And this contradiction stirred him intensely, as if in that moment he had been disarmed not by weapons, but by a gesture of humanity. When he finished his meal, he slowly stood up, straightened his weather-worn uniform, and walked to the counter where the waitress was standing. Their eyes met, and without hesitation, he extended his hand, firm but with a tremor that betrayed the depth of his emotion. She shook his hand without hesitation, and in that simple contact, something much greater than a thank you was registered, a connection between two souls that for a brief moment broke the barriers of everyday life. He murmured words of gratitude once more, but this time he finished with a silent promise in his eyes, as if to say, "One day, this will come back to you in ways you can't even imagine." And that was how he left the restaurant, without making a fuss, simply leaving behind an atmosphere charged with something that everyone present felt, but few could explain. The people watching the scene in silence seemed to understand that they had witnessed something special, one of those hidden truths that rarely emerge amidst the hustle and bustle of life. The waitress stood still for a few seconds, watching his departure. She didn't know why, but she had the feeling their encounter wouldn't end there. It was as if that gesture of kindness had opened an invisible door to a journey of revelations and consequences that were just beginning. And perhaps that's precisely what makes stories like this so powerful. They carry with them the weight of destinies that intertwine at unexpected moments. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what happens next shows that a simple act can transform into a chain of life-changing impact. Comment. I'm on this journey too. The hours passed slowly after that memorable scene. The waitress continued her routine at the restaurant, clearing plates, waiting tables, exchanging automatic smiles with hurried customers. But deep down, her heart still warmed by the decision she had made. The gesture seemed simple to outsiders, just paying for a meal. But deep inside, she felt like she had done the right thing, even if her financial reality told her otherwise. Her life was full of piling bills, worries, and uncertainties, but for a few minutes, that choice had given her journey greater meaning. The night wore on, and the restaurant's activity slowed. The lights reflected off the nearly empty tables, and a denser silence began to take over the room. It was at that moment, just when she thought this would be just another difficult day, ending with more exhaustion than hope, that the restaurant door opened again. The discreet sound of the bell announcing someone's entrance seemed to echo differently. Charged with something she couldn't explain, she looked up, distracted, expecting to see another random customer, but in that instant, something inside her shifted. The air felt heavier, and at the same time, a different energy circulated. It was as if the room itself had stopped for a second, inviting everyone to pay attention to what was about to happen. A man entered. His walk was firm, full of purpose, and his eyes roamed the room as if he already knew exactly who he wanted to meet. Dessert. Waitress, without realizing it, stood still for a few seconds, her heart racing for no apparent reason. A feeling of tension mixed with curiosity invaded her mind. Who was he? Why did this moment suddenly seem to carry much more weight than the mere arrival of a customer? She could never have imagined who was about to walk through that door, and most importantly, the impact it would have on her life. The people around her barely noticed the scene, but to her, it felt like a movie. The contrast was intense. On one side, her simple, repetitive routine, marked by silent struggles. On the other, this man who seemed to carry a hidden truth, a revelation about to be revealed. His gaze fixed on her, and for a moment, she felt as if she were being watched, not just as the waitress at the restaurant, but as someone whose destiny was about to be transformed. The next few seconds seemed to drag by. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure, but her heart insisted on beating faster. Her mind, tired of so many worries, began to formulate hypotheses. Perhaps it was just another customer, perhaps someone looking for a normal meal. But something inside told her otherwise. That moment carried a greater impact, as if it were the continuation of a story that had begun hours before, and now was about to reveal a new chapter. The man approached the counter slowly, his every step echoing differently, as if the entire restaurant was listening to the outcome. The silence that had once seemed ordinary had now become expectant, like the pause before a big reveal. She adjusted her apron with trembling hands, unable to look away. It was impossible to ignore the feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what happened next wasn't just a coincidence, but proof that the simplest choices can open doors to revelations that change everything. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. The man who had just entered was not just another customer, and this was evident the moment he removed his coat, revealing a firm and confident posture. His presence carried authority, but not in an arrogant way. It was the kind of authority that commanded quiet respect. The waitress felt a wave of curiosity rush through her, as if she were about to witness a revelation that could change not only her life, but also the meaning of everything that had happened up until that moment. He approached one of the tables, but before even sitting down, he looked directly at her, and that gaze held something that seemed to read beyond the surface, as if he knew exactly who she was and what she had done hours before. The tension grew. As she tried to maintain professionalism, placing the order pad in her hand, her mind raced with thoughts. Was he just some random businessman? Had he come by chance? Or perhaps he was somehow connected to the soldier she had helped. With each step he took, the sense of mystery grew. The atmosphere seemed quieter, almost as if the entire restaurant were waiting for a revelation. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but with a firmness that left no doubt he carried an important story. He didn't begin by ordering food, didn't talk about the menu, didn't even mention the special of the day. He looked at her and said something that took her breath away. "I heard what you did." The words pierced the air like an arrow, and for a moment she couldn't respond. Her heart raced, her breath became shallow, and a mixture of shock and shame took over. How could he know? Who was this man to speak with such certainty? The answer was not long in coming. He explained that he was not there by chance. He was, in fact, someone connected to the soldier, perhaps a commander who deeply respected his men, or perhaps an influential businessman who, by coincidence or fate, had witnessed the scene from afar and decided to intervene. Whatever the case, the waitress understood in that instant that her decision, so small in the eyes of the world, had caught the attention of someone with the power to transform realities. And this revelation was like a storm of emotions: fear, surprise, gratitude, and above all, hope. The man continued, saying that gestures like these couldn't go unnoticed. He saw in her attitude something greater than just momentary kindness. It was a symbol of character, of compassion, of humanity in its purest form. And in that moment, she realized she was facing a turning point that could completely redefine her journey. That night, which had begun with worry about bills and debts, now became a stage where life's hidden truth was revealed. When we choose to help, even in our greatest difficulties, the universe finds mysterious ways to give back in kind. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what happened next showed that the most unlikely decisions can open up paths no one would dare imagine. Comment: that makes sense to me. He wasn't just acknowledging her actions with words. He was giving real weight to the gesture that for her had been nothing more than a heartfelt choice. As he spoke, the man described how the news had already circulated among some of the soldiers' colleagues, and how deeply touched they all were that a woman, clearly facing her own silent battles, had chosen to act so generously. It was as if that moment had broken the barrier of simplicity and transformed into something much greater, a hidden truth we rarely see. That genuine compassion has the power to transcend boundaries and generate waves of transformation. The waitress, who had so often been invisible to the world, was now beginning to be noticed. It wasn't for her appearance, nor for the worn uniform she wore, but for the strength of her resolve, her honesty, and the courage to help without expecting anything in return. Recognition came not only in the eyes of that influential man, but also in every detail that unfolded from that encounter onward. He assured her that this act wouldn't remain just between them. There were people interested in showing the world the importance of such choices. Her life, until then made up of behind-the-scenes battles, was about to enter a new stage. And that's how the unexpected began to happen. Customers who had previously passed by the restaurant without noticing her presence now looked at her differently, as if they could see something previously hidden. Some even made discreet comments. Others left generous tips, and there were those who simply smiled with silent respect. The impact was just beginning, and she felt like someone walking in unfamiliar territory where every gesture, every word could open a new door. This recognition brought more than financial relief. It brought a renewed sense of purpose. It was as if life had whispered in her ear, "You made the right choice." It gave her the strength to believe that not all her struggles would be in vain, that even in the greatest difficulties there was still room for light and hope. The transformation was not only external in the eyes of others, but also within her. The mindset of scarcity and fear began to give way to something greater, the conviction that every act of kindness has the power to change destinies, including her own. And when we think the world isn't watching, that's precisely when small gestures shine brightest. Recognition can come from where you least expect it, from a stranger, a word of gratitude, or a quiet movement that spreads like wildfire. Her story is proof that the most impactful revelations don't come from grandiose plans, but from simple decisions made in the heat of real life. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because what happened next showed that this recognition was just the beginning of a much longer journey, full of twists and turns no one could have foreseen. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. The great lesson that begins to emerge from this story is that the greatest impacts almost never arise from moments of abundance, but rather from scarcity, when each decision weighs more heavily than we imagine. It's in the midst of hardship that choices prove most powerful, because it's not easy to give up something when you already have little. But it's in this scenario that kindness gains extraordinary power. The Waitress's act showed that true transformation doesn't happen when everything is in our favor, but when we dare to challenge the logic of survival to prioritize compassion. This seemingly simple gesture is a profound reminder that destinies don't change solely with major events, but with small seeds of generosity that germinate in the right hearts. How often do we look at life and think nothing will change, that we're stuck in a cycle of repetition and hardship? However, it's precisely in these moments of disbelief that stories like this emerge as revelations, breaking the rhythm of hopelessness and bringing a new mindset. It's not just about the meal paid for or the soldier fed, but the message hidden in the gesture. Every choice carries an invisible impact, one that can expand far beyond what we can see. This is the hidden truth that few perceive in our daily lives, but which, when revealed, makes us question the decisions we make and the paths we fail to follow. The power of this story also lies in its contrast. On one side, a woman struggling with mounting bills, living the silent behind the scenes of her own daily battle. On the other, a weary soldier, carrying the weight of responsibility and uncertainty on his shoulders, both silent, both invisible to the rush of the world. But all it took was a single gesture for their paths to connect, creating a narrative that goes beyond immediate necessity. This is proof that life presents us with unexpected crossroads, and it is the decisions we make in those moments that define who we are and the impact we leave on others. This reflection leads us to understand that kindness is a universal language, understood in any context, anywhere. Regardless of culture, social status, or stage of life, when someone decides to act with compassion, the message transcends all barriers. And it is precisely this power that transforms a simple gesture into a collective movement, inspiring others to question how they can also make a difference. What began as a discreet act inside an ordinary restaurant has the potential to become a silent call for all who hear this story. And if we think more deeply, we realize that life offers us similar opportunities every day, even though we rarely recognize them. A caring look, a word of encouragement, a small sacrifice for someone. These are moments that may seem insignificant, but they carry within them the same energy capable of transforming destinies. The waitress didn't know who that soldier was, didn't know his story, and couldn't foresee the repercussions of her choice. But even without this knowledge, she chose to act based on a principle. Kindness has value in itself, regardless of the reward. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic because what follows shows how this decision, born of simplicity, became a powerful revelation about how we see the world and how life rewards us when we cultivate genuine empathy. Comment. That makes sense to me. What truly makes this story so powerful isn't just what happened between that waitress and the soldier, but its reflection within each of us, because deep down, we all experience moments when we have to choose between focusing solely on our own struggles or seeing others as part of our journey. It's precisely at this point that life surprises us. When we reach out, even without guarantees of a return, it's as if we light a flame that illuminates far beyond our immediate reach. Small decisions, made in the silence of the heart, can become symbols of hope in a world so often marked by haste, selfishness, and indifference. This is the hidden truth that often goes unnoticed. We don't need great heroic acts to transform the world, but rather small choices filled with true intention. The waitress had no material wealth to offer, but she offered what she most precious at that moment, her solidarity. The soldier, in turn, received much more than a meal. He received proof that kindness still exists in human relationships, that faith in humanity can be restored by seemingly simple gestures. This is the essence of transformation. When something small gains a gigantic impact because it touches the deepest layers of our sensitivity, it's impossible not to think about how this connects to our own lives. How often do we face decisions that seem too small to matter? A smile offered to someone in silence, a word of support spoken at the right moment, or even the patience to listen to someone who simply needs to be heard. These gestures, so discreet, have a ripple effect we can never fully calculate. Life behind the scenes shows us that what we plant today can flourish in places we never imagined. The power of a decision lies not only in what it resolves in the immediate future, but in the revelations it provokes in the future. And herein lies the most profound impact of this story. It calls us to look within and realize that we all have this same capacity. It's not about having a lot or a little, but about being willing to act with compassion, even when it would be easier to ignore it. When we cultivate this mindset that our journey is intertwined with that of others, we begin to see life as a space of constant exchange where every decision has the potential to inspire and lift someone up. This is the true miracle hidden in acts of kindness. They connect us, remind us we are not alone, and show us that there is always room for hope. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because the way this story resonated was not only emotional, but also transformative on a collective scale, revealing something essential about how small actions can rewrite entire destinies. Comment, I'm on this journey too. Do you realize how a simple act can cross invisible barriers and touch people far beyond our wildest imaginations? When we hear stories like these, we're not just hearing about someone far away, but we're invited to reflect on our own choices, on the times we could have acted differently, and on the impact small decisions have on the journey of those who cross our path. Each act of kindness is like a seed planted in the soil of life. Sometimes it germinates silently, unseen, but one day it blossoms and becomes shade, shelter, and nourishment for many. That's why sharing these moments is so important, because they reinforce our faith in humanity and remind us that transformation and hope begin in the smallest details. Now, I want to invite you to join this conversation. This space isn't just about telling stories, but also about creating a community that believes in the power of empathy and solidarity. When you leave a comment, say what touched you most, or share a similar experience, you're not just responding to me, you're inspiring others who will come here and read your words. Often, a simple phrase can ignite something within someone who needed strength to carry on. Your participation is what keeps this flame burning, because this channel exists to multiply messages that uplift, heal, and transform. So, if this story spoke to you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment below. This message was for me. This will show that you've walked with me this far and that you believe that kindness can, indeed, change destinies. Take advantage and leave your like, because this simple gesture further strengthens this message and helps it reach other hearts who need to hear something like it today. And if you feel it's worth continuing to receive stories that inspire, warm, and reveal the hidden truth of humanity, subscribe to the channel right now. This way, you'll ensure you'll always be connected to content that nourishes the soul and renews hope. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the way stories of compassion multiply and transform doesn't happen by chance, but carries revelations about how each of us can be agents of this change in our daily lives. If you've made it this far, it's because this story spoke to you in some way, and that alone shows how much kindness still finds a place in our hearts. So, leave a like, because this simple gesture helps keep this wave of hope alive. And if you want to continue receiving content that truly resonates and touches your soul, subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll always be close and won't miss any of these transformative stories. Oh, and let me know in the comments below with the phrase, "I'm with you until the end." It'll be incredible to know who was with me until the very last seconds. And since you're here, don't stop now. There's a video right here that complements this topic and that I'm sure will move you even further. Click and stay with me there, because this journey of inspiration and discovery doesn't end here.